You must be familiar in JavaScript. I showed you JavaScript events related few topics I explained. We discussed about what is event handler, event listener, event arguments. We have default arguments, custom arguments, right? What else? Event propagation. Event propagation, another. Prevent default. So these are event related important topics we already learned. So while working with events, you should know these points about events. Once you know these in JavaScript, it will be easy for us to use in React. And what is the concept I explained detailedly? What is handler and listener difference? What is handler and listener difference? Once you know, events are configured in design by using an handler, dynamically by using listeners. And what is the purpose of default arguments? Default arguments are required for carrying data related to element and event. We can carry data related to element and event using default. Custom arguments means our own arguments. What is propagation? Child events may trigger the parent. We need to stop after the child. Then we have to use stop propagation. Prevent default means elements in HTML may have default events. We have to stop those default events, like I showed you form. And how do we stop default events? By using prevent default. We have two methods. So one is stop propagation. Another method we have like prevent default. These are important events. Now, one more important about events you should know. Another concept about event is, so you should know about what is event loop. What is event loop? Events related another concept is event loop. Actually, event loop means generally in JavaScript, when you give any task through event, that means on button click, you want some action. On drop down change, you want some action. Then when you give task to JavaScript, JavaScript have an order of executing these tasks. That means in JavaScript, your tasks will not run just like that. And your task will not run in the same order how you written. They have an order. That is called event loop. Event loop is the process of executing our tasks in a priority order. For example, I will show you. So generally, what happens is in our project, suppose I'm showing you a simple HTML page. We have a button and this button have execute. So we have on click, execute click, and see here we are writing a function execute click. In this we are writing some set timeout. You know, set timeout is a JavaScript timer event. Huh? Here also I will show you. Suppose 0 and console.log. We have macro task and we have console.log. This is normal task. And we have a data is equal to new promise. So promise uses a callback, resolve and reject. And this promise resolve have an option. This is micro task. And promises usually run by using then get the response and console.log print the response. Actually, now on button click, I given three works, three tasks I have given. One micro task, another macro task and normal. Generally console, log, document, write, normal functions, they all come under category of normal task. Anything you written using timeout is considered as macro. Anything you designed as a promise is considered as micro. Now, what is execution order is JavaScript always executes normal task first. After that, micro task. After that, macro. That means always execution order is same. You may write anything anywhere, but it will execute in one order. And what is that order is? First priority, normal. Second, micro. Third, macro. Have I written in the same order? No. Let's see. Run this and see now. When you run this here, we will go into inspect. And in that console, I will open. You see, this is the console I am having. Now, when I click the button execute, you can see those three are executed in correct order. You may write in any order, but they have an order. This order, if you don't know and give the tasks on any event, you expect something, something else will come. That means every JavaScript person knows how the functions will execute in an order. What is the order? Without knowing this order, if you give work to any event, we expect something else will come on screen. That because you have written without knowing, without knowledge of order. That means you should know that every task will run in this order. All micro tasks are second or normal task first. All macro tasks at the end. How to design macro tasks? Using set timeout. Using set timeout, you design macro task. Right? Remember, set timeout I given 0 seconds. Means it will not wait at all. Without waiting, it will run. Generally 2 seconds, 10 seconds we can give. So I given 0 seconds, but it is executing last because that is the order. This process is called event loop, right? So in interviews, a very popular question for experienced people also. What is event looping, right? So what is event loop? So event loop is the process of executing a set of tasks on specific event. Event loop is the process of executing a set of tasks on specific event. Executing a set of tasks on specific event. So JavaScript can run given set of tasks using following priority. First is normal task. Second is micro task. Third is macro task. Normal task refer to general functions. So micro task refer to promise based asynchronous functions. Macro task refer to so debounce using timeout. So debounce is a mechanism you might have learned in JavaScript about debounce and throttle, right? So otherwise here I will show you how debounce and throttle works. So this is event loop. Given set of tasks. Huh? So it can run given set of tasks. So example, I will copy that. So this is example. Remember, these are all I'm giving JavaScript examples because I'm explaining these events in JavaScript. Huh? Because once you know them, then only we can use the same in React, right? So you need to know these topics. One more general topic is there. So it is not any program or anything, but concept you should know. In interviews, they may ask, what is event profiling? What is event profiling? That's not any program to show you, and you don't need to even learn it. You have to just understand what it is actually. Event profiling means when we give events to any app, developer needs to track the performance of events. That means how much time it is taking. So what order it is using to execute. Is there any delay in the execution of event? This all we do call as profiling. Event profiling is the process of tracking the events. How much time taken, what is problem happened in event, all these, that is actually developer. Developer, that is who is involved in testing. For those people, this profiling is important. For example, you see how to do profiling is in the browser. Currently, I opened browser developer tools in right panel. Na? These are called developer tools. In developer tools, you will find a performance button. You go to performance button. In the performance, you click on this record. There is a record option. Click on that record. Once you click record, it starts recording. Now you refresh the page. After that, you click the button. Some action is performed. After that, stop recording. It will show all the activities performed. That means what events executed, in which order they executed. You can see the event log. It will show all the events it executed, how much time it has taken, everything it will display. I go to call tree, it will show even micro tasks if they run micro task, it will show run micro task na, right? It will show that some micro tasks also running, how much time they are taking, all this. These are not for ordinary people. These are for people who are involved in testing apps, performances and all. Event loop is a concept for them. Yeah, sorry, event profile. Profiling is one important concept that is used for tracking the performance and reporting it, right? So just to know it, I showed you. So what is event profiling? Just a note you need to know here. Profiling is the process of it is the process of tracking performance of events in page. It includes event log, call tree, etc. So it provides details about event loop and time consumed for events, etc. All these things profiling will do. Because when you put React in profile and go for interviews, questions will be majorly on JavaScript instead of React. Because a React developer is a perfect developer when he is perfect in JavaScript. And you put your resume as Java .NET developer without React or Angular, no calls, zero. You will not get any call from any company. Every day you open your resume and see it. No interviewer will watch it. Right? HR people will treat it like a dustbin, right? They throw in a dustbin. So because in the current generation, the every web developer so must show the skills of not React, all front end technologies, major, compulsory, right? And it is very important to show. That's the reason majority your interviews, if you are a fresher, your interviews will be on majority JavaScript. So even you put high profile in your resume as a fresher also, then questions will be majority on JavaScript problem solving and all. Okay. Now we learnt all JavaScript related interview terms. These are all interview topics of events. So what is which design pattern event follows? Which design pattern event follows? Can you tell? Huh? He is watching the previous pages. Huh? Why you are not listening to class regularly? No, this person. No. What do you know up to now then? Huh? You are watching the previous page. Have you got the answer? Huh? Which mechanism it follows? Not which mechanism it uses? Huh? What is it? Delegate means it's okay. You will understand. Huh? In further stages, you will understand more complex also. Okay, na? Mm. This is beginning only, na? Right? So in the beginning stages, these basics, if you remember, that's very great. At this level, this is enough. Later, some more complex will come. Okay? You need to keep learning and remembering these technical words important. Okay? Now, let's see how this will help in our React, right? So how these concepts will work in React. So we are going to learn about events in React. So React event binding. Already I just given that heading, but I explained all JavaScript things. Huh? Now we will see what is React event binding, how it actually works. So now what is the problem in JavaScript events is all are DOM events. All JavaScript events are browser events. For example, we have button. So we have event called on click. On click is an event. Click is an event. On click is a handler. Click is an event. So this event belongs to which element? Click event belongs to which element? Events doesn't belong to elements. Events doesn't belong to elements. Events belong to browser. Browser have a object called window. All events belong to browser window. You can right click for div span also. A div span also can perform click. They can perform click. So events are actually related to browser. Then obviously React cannot use them because React is not using actual DOM. It is using virtual. Then how events work in React? Let's see the point. So the first point you should know here is JavaScript events are browser events. JavaScript events are browser events. They are browser events. Browser window object configures events for elements. Browser window object configures events for elements. So React cannot use browser events. React cannot use browser events. It cannot use the browser events directly. Browser events directly. That is the reason for React, because it have to deal with virtual DOM. So React uses synthetic events. Synthetic events library. React uses synthetic events library for virtual DOM events. It uses synthetic events library. React uses synthetic events library for virtual DOM events. That means in React, we have a library called synthetic event. All events are derived from this synthetic event. Generally, what happens is synthetic event is the base for all events in virtual DOM. And important, synthetic event synthetic event synthetic event maps to browser events. Synthetic event maps to browser event. That means in React, we write synthetic events. These synthetics event will connect with the browser events. They work with the browser events. So synthetic events will map to browser events. So all events that we use in React are not browser events. They are all derived from a library called synthetic events, all derived from there. Now, synthetic events little bit different from your browser events. So how to use them? Let's see. What are the rules and all? Are there any changes in using these events? We'll see that. Actually, event binding, how it works. Generally, event means it should point towards a function. Here also same. How it points towards a function, I will show you. For example, let's see the concept here. I posted this example. Yeah. Okay. So see the point here. Suppose I'm using, this is just one JSX file. Don't worry about it. Just see. We have a event called, suppose roughly, I'm using an event on click. That's an event. Let's right click and go to definition. That means you can right click and go to definition. So when I go to definition, it will get me to the definition. It is coming from which one? It is derived from mouse events. Okay, right click on mouse event handler and go to definition. This mouse event is coming from mouse event handler. Mouse event handler is derived from event handler. Right click and go to definition. Event handler is extending synthetic event. Am I right? So that means you go to the definition. This is the base for all events. Synthetic event is the base for all events. You see base synthetic event now? It extends base synthetic events. So when I go to definition, this is base synthetic event. And have you observed this is having e dot target? Have you seen? And prevent default. Am I right? Right. We have stop propagations. Methods will be there. Stop propagation is also there now. These are all event properties. These are all general event properties. Now, I have shown you a tracking mechanism, means from where it derived, what properties it is having. Can you tell what this process of knowing and tracking information about any object is known as? In Java or .NET or any OOP language, what is this mechanism known as? The process of knowing what an object contains, from where it is derived, what properties it contains, what methods it contains. It is called as reflection. Reflection API. Java have Java reflection APIs. C++ have reflection libraries. C# have reflection APIs. Reflection is a concept of OOP. And what is that concept is? If I am using a class, I am creating an object for a class. And how do I know what members are present for that object? What properties it have? What methods it have? Because in real-time projects, we will not design a class, but we will be responsible for using the class. Somebody will design a class, we will use it. Then how you will use a class without knowing what it contains? When you are learning, your trainer will teach you. This have these properties, these methods. While designing in real time, if any custom designed class is present, how you will know its properties and methods? By using a technique called reflection. Reflection is the process of tracking the properties and methods availability present in any object of a class. That's what I showed actually now. So through reflection, I came here and I showed you. But actually in Java, .NET, C++, you can write a program and you pass a class name or object name into the program. It will return all properties and methods it have. That mechanism is called as reflection. So that's not the concept. I just explained what I showed you. You may be thinking, what is this go-to definition? It is the process of tracking what properties and methods we have for an object, from where it is derived, what it contains. See, a developer have to explore several things by himself, because in real-time projects, majority you have to work with custom objects. That means in their project, they designed some classes. You even Google them, you will not get any answer for them. Then how you will know about them and use them? Will anybody sit beside you and tell you? No. You have to track by yourself. You need to know what properties it is having and you need to implement. And that is the concept of reflection APIs. So why I showed you all this? Because you should know that all are derived from one base. What is that? Synthetic event base. Right? You are using synthetic events, but they map. So for example, here means I will not show all the tracking, just the point I will explain here. That means what is it? Suppose just syntactically, suppose we are using on click. So this on click is derived from, means it is derived from mouse event, just roughly, not the accurate one. Huh? Mouse event is derived from event handler actually. Huh? This event is derived from synthetic event handler. Huh? Synthetic event handler. This synthetic event handler is derived from base synthetic event handler. Base synthetic event. No need to know this, but just important. So because we are not learning React targeting a fresher, because you are sitting here, but so many people online, several people online, they have individually joined this React course and they are already experienced developers, right? So that is the reason we have to target everybody. So for experienced people, how the question asked in interviews. For a fresher, this is too much, not required. For a fresher, what is event is enough. You don't need to know from where it is derived and all this. But these are very common question at experience level. So you are sitting here in this batch just because React is an add-on for you. But many developers are learning this individually, joining this course and dealing with this because they have to put this in their profile for jobs, right? Especially as React developer. So this class is not targeted for you actually. You are just add-on, you are sitting here. This is targeted to our extreme experienced learners who are learning the technology for cracking jobs on React. That's the reason from basic level to advanced, every point we have to discuss here. Advanced level topics are out of your reach and range, not required every time, right? Basic topics, if you remember, that is enough at a fresher level. Other such topics are important for experience, mandatory, because for experienced people, question will be like, from where it is there. Means fresher question will be like, what is event? And for experienced people, explain architecture of event, how event works. For fresher, we will ask question, what is browser? For experienced people, we ask, explain browser architecture, how browser works, how HTML is translated in browser, all these things. Generally, we learn that in HTML and all. Usually, this is to little bit understand the advanced level of event. What is event? Okay. Now you understood the concept. Let's see how to write the events. And very important is synthetic events. Synthetic events are defined in camel case. They are defined in camel case. Synthetic events are defined in camel case. And important, events in React point towards a function in component. Events in React point towards a function in component. And here again, so many concepts are there. I will show you. Means how do we write? For example, syntactically, we have a button. On click is equal to, we have to write some handle insert click like this. Now we need a function. What is the function name? Handle insert click. That is the point. So dynamically we have to bind event pointing towards a function. Here so many rules you need to learn which are different. So when you learned about events in JavaScript, I showed you. Event have arguments. Na? How many default arguments are there? 2. One is this, another one event. What is speciality about synthetic event is it passes default arguments implicitly. That means synthetic event will pass the default arguments implicitly. That means already your handle insert click is receiving event arguments. Understood? That means we don't need to pass. Implicitly it passes. That means you see here, suppose I will create one example here. So let's put one component called event binding. Okay. So event binding.jsx. I'll just create here export. So function event binding. So this is event binding we have. So in this event binding, I will just put a button. Later examples we will see. First, I put a button here, some insert. So this button have a name. So as insert. So it have an ID, btn insert, something like this. Now we need a function for this. Handle insert click. And we need to point towards the function on click. So which one? Handle insert click. Now automatically this insert click receives an argument E. It receives an argument. And remember, this is a listener argument. Listener argument. I told you handler arguments, listener arguments. Handler arguments, how many? 2 will be there. One is event, another one this. Listener have only one argument. And that listener argument have access to both element details and event details. How to access element details? Suppose I am using console log. Here I want to access button name. How to access button name? E dot target dot name. So in the next line, I want to access the button ID. How to access E dot target dot ID. In the next line, I want exposition. How to access exposition? E dot client X. That's how we do. Earlier in JavaScript, you have to pass the arguments, but now they are already passed. You just use them. Synthetic events difference is that. So in normal JavaScript events, we have to pass. Yesterday I showed you already. We have to pass two arguments, but now it's already available. Let's run this and see. So run dev and yeah. So when we run this here, so I will change our component in the startup. In the startup main.jsx, here I will keep here. What is it? Event binding. Event binding is in startup. Okay, now you have a button and let's go and inspect and console. Okay, let's click the button and see. And you can see it is able to access the data. So we are not passing. It is automatically accessing. That is one important new thing you should know here. So what is the key point here is, so synthetic event sends default arguments. Synthetic events sends default arguments to function. Default arguments to function. The arguments refer to event listener. Refers to event listener. So event listener we know already uses a single argument to handle element and event details. Event details. So default arguments to function. So how we can collect them? So function handle insert click E. E dot target dot ID name value and all. E dot client X client Y like this. So event argument. Now another important point is, then obviously question will come how to send default arguments then. How we can send default arguments, because automatically it is having arguments. How we can send default arguments? Here there is no scope of sending default arguments. Here you can't send any arguments here in this syntax. By default arguments are sent, you can collect them and use them. So how you can send default arguments? Let's see the point. I will copy this first. This is example up to this. This is example for how to access default arguments. This is just event binding.jsx. Just I'm using default. Okay, now next important point is you can configure custom arguments. You can configure custom arguments by using a callback function. By using a callback function in event, by using a callback function in event. You using a callback function in event. You can configure custom arguments by using a callback function in event. That means syntactically, when you write event on click, when you write event here, you can have a callback function. This callback function will use which one? Handle insert click. So into that you can pass your arguments. You can pass your arguments. If you want to pass your arguments, you need this. So if you want to send your arguments, then you have to use a callback. Through that callback function, you can send arguments. Let's see. So what I am doing here is I am removing this. Okay. Removing this. And I will use a callback function here. By using a callback, I can access which one? Handle click. Into that, I will pass here ID. So one name, I will put some array. You can pass any complex data. So I'm passing some details. Yesterday I showed you how to collect all these details. We can collect using a REST parameter. You can use a REST parameter and console log, and REST parameter, you know, it is array type. And you can see that it is able to collect all those data and display on insert. It is getting all of them. So we cannot directly pass custom arguments. We need a callback function. Now the question asked in interview, how you will send both default and custom now, right? That means how you will pass both default and custom. Here you can send only custom. If I remove this, then I can send only default. Then how you can send both default and custom arguments? If you want to send both default and custom arguments, you can see here another point I will show you. You can send both default and custom arguments by using event as event as a formal parameter in event callback. By using event as formal parameter. By using event as formal parameter in event callback. So this is the event callback. In the event callback, formal parameter means formal parameters are defined in declaration. These are actual parameters, right? So formal are in declaration, actual parameters while calling the function. That means what you do here, we have to use syntactically. We have button on click. Here we have to use E. Handle insert click. Here you can send E your own arguments, default arguments, and your arguments. You can define like this. That means we can pass both. Directly, you cannot use E because E is treated as a custom argument. You have to configure it inside where formal, inside formal, and we have to use in actual. And remember, this is just event reference. You can give any name, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, anything. So that is referring to event. So that's the reason we are traditionally using the character E. You can use X, Y, Z, anything, right? It doesn't require to mention only E. You can use any, but it refers to only event. So you see now I want to send both of them. Then obviously you have E, and here you know the rules, because when we use rest parameter must be last. So I will put here E. Am I right? And what we can do is we can collect that E here, and through E we can print other details. Console.log. Suppose this button is having ID name, na? So we will access here button ID. Button ID. How we can access E dot target dot ID. Just one is enough. That means you can see when I refresh and I click, I have both the details. So the top is the custom arguments and this one is the default argument. We can send both arguments. We can send only default arguments. You don't need to send default arguments. By default, they will be sent. You can send custom arguments, only custom arguments or along with default. Then you have to use a callback and define a callback like this. That means your function should collect them. Handle insert click must collect E and params. Your wish, you collect individually or you collect using a REST, your wish. So this is about event. So what you learned here, how to write event, how to execute a function on event, how to pass the parameters to that function, how we can pass default parameters and how we can pass custom parameters. Now prevent, default, propagation all are same. There is no change in that. We have to use everything in a same way. That means parent child, how you stop propagation, you already know. So because you can access ENA, you have a method called what? Stop propagation. You have seen already it is having that. If it is default, you have to use E dot prevent default. Same. So these are no change. So I'll give one point. So another point. Event propagation. And preventing default events is same as in JavaScript. So that means you have to use function, some handle event E. By default, E will come E dot stop propagation. We have E dot prevent default. Just roughly these two. There is no change in that. stop propagation and prevent default. So there is no change in this point. Okay. Now, what we have to learn here is how to use different events situation wise in real world examples where we use them. We need to know about those events now. Examples we have to learn. Let's see category wise how the events are used with different examples, how they work. And very major point, I told you already that our React uses implicitly one-way binding. How two-way binding is handled in React, which event is responsible, that is the major part. So let's say here two-way data binding. How this two-way data binding works. Two-way data binding. And what is the major point is React implicitly supports one-way binding. This I already showed you. They claim this as a feature also, na one-way binding. So two-way, two-way binding, two-way binding for elements can be configured only by using the synthetic event, only by using the synthetic event on change. That is only the event which is used for synthetic, which is used for two-way. Any another event cannot be used for two-way. Two-way can be enabled only by using on change. So here what is the point? You can enable two-way binding only with on change. You can enable two-way binding only with on change. You cannot use others. Generally in JavaScript, two-way binding can be done with any event. Any event can manage two-way, but not in React. In JavaScript, any event can manage two-way. I will show you both differences we will see. For example, see here, suppose I will show you the two-way how it is handled. Suppose I am having a text box. Input type is text, ID as txt name, and paragraph and user something. Now, what is our requirement is we want to display some username inside the text box. So we will write on load, body load. So we will write a script here. So where some uname, it's a empty string, and function we have body load. On body load, suppose this is some having variable John. Now document dot get element by ID txt name dot value is equal to uname. Now it is going to display that username here. I want to display the same in paragraph document dot query selector paragraph inner HTML. It should display some hello and uname, whatever uname is there. It is going to display that inside there. Now, whenever any modification happened in text box, I should update into uname. So we will write a function. So suppose name change. Okay. And see here, what should happen? uname is equal to document dot get element by id txt name dot what value. And I need to update that in the paragraph also again. I will update that latest name in the paragraph. Okay. Now see what happens here. You when it should handle this name change. That means I am using event. Suppose I am using event on blur name change. That means I clicked inside, I typed a new name. After that, I click outside, blur, it will change. That is on blur. That's general JavaScript blur event. Okay, I'm using on key up. On key up is another event. You see, I click and type, it is working. I can handle on blur. I can handle on key up. I can handle on change. On change. I can handle on change. I click here and you say some change happened into this, then it will do. So you can modify the data of any element and update into the source on any event, but not in React. In React, you have to do only with on change. Let's see. So same thing we will try to do in React, right? So to do this in React, you need React techniques. I will clean up this. I will remove this button. I will put here simple data list data term username. I'll put a text box here. Input type is text. And this text box, okay. Below this text box, we put a heading. Okay. I will collect constant username, set username. Am I right? So, okay, username and set username. Fine. And is equal to use state. It is an initially empty some John or some text I will give. We need to bind this with the text box. Na? Text box will have a value. Value is what? User name. And you can see now it is showing. Am I right? Okay, now I click and I want to show the same in heading also. We will use hello and binding expression. What is it? User name. And it shows the same. Now I click inside. I am trying to modify. It's not working because there is no event mentioned. Okay, let's do one thing. I will write a function called handle name change. This function should fire up when user handles here. I will use event called on key up. I am using on key up. On key up, which event it should handle? Handle name change. And into this function, how we will send the current text box value. How you can send the current text box value, how you will collect here. We don't use any document get element by ID. How we collect the value from text box? Through E. Through E, I can collect everything about text box. Na? Okay. Where we have to set username. What is it? E dot target dot value. That is text box value. Na? It will come and store there. But you see here, I am writing that and I refresh and I click, it's not working. But JavaScript I saw working. Here I am using on blur or on change something. On blur I am using. On blur I am using. Just I showed you in JavaScript now. And you see here I clicked, I am trying type nothing. That means you can do only with which event? On change. When I attach this on change and you can see here, now I can modify. Two-way binding can be handled only by using this. That's the reason React says we have little better security, because on any another event it will not do. Accidentally, intentionally, you try to write some event and modify the data, it is unable to do that. It can do only on one event. What is that? On change. Remember, this is for two-way binding. Two-way binding means getting the data from source and update in UI, make the changes in UI and update back into the source. Directly, if you want to send some data from UI to the source, there is another technique I will show you, right? Initially, first point is two-way binding can be achieved only by using one event. What is it? On change, on change. So here, remember, then you people may ask like, then what is use of other events? On key up, on blur. Remember, on key up, on blur, other events are used to perform other operations on the data. But collecting data from element can be done only by using on change. That means you can collect data using on change and do other operations when key up, key down, key press, blur, and others. Suppose after collecting, I need to convert into uppercase. I need to slice the data. Then all other operations you will see. We will try some examples on that. So initially, this is very important. So here one important point is you can configure multiple events for any element in component. But two-way binding can be enabled only with on change. That is the point. Two-way binding can be enabled only with on change. So syntactically, any element, it is not just only text box. Input type text on change. It should handle change. Suppose you are using a drop down, and it also requires on change. Handle change. Suppose you are dealing with a checkbox or a radio, input type checkbox. So on change. We will see different examples how to handle them. If you don't write on change, two-way will not work at all. It will not allow to modify. It will be treated as read only. And how you access the data, handle change, uses an event argument. Through that, it can access the data of that element. How you can access e dot target dot value. So it returns element value. It returns element value. So that is how we can handle the events. This is all the basic idea of events, and I will copy this example. This is event binding related example. Now, once you know this, by using these events, we will try to implement the functionalities now. That means we are going to learn all the events one by one. Mouse events, keyboard events, button events, how they work. Then we have to use these events in building that shopping app now. So you tried designing a right API, fetching, presenting. Have you tried? You have to do that so that in next level, I will show how to make it work. Right? So tomorrow we'll continue. In tomorrow's session, we will learn examples with events now. One event, its examples. Tomorrow you'll see that.